Hello and welcome to this seminar. Sorry that you missed us at the World of Learning. My name is Jill Pennington. I'm Senior Director of Talent Consulting Solutions here at Talogy, and I'm joined by my colleague, Miriam McCallum. Miriam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello everybody. So my name is Miriam McCallum and I am the director of Talogy's coaching practice here in the UK.
So we would like to talk to you for about 30 minutes about leadership and more particularly about leadership development and how recent changes in leadership are impacting leadership development and what organizations are doing around leadership development.
Okay, so what we'd like to do is begin by telling you a story. And this story is purely fictional, and it's really just to illustrate a point. So it's called The Fall of Orion Technologies. Orion Technologies had always been a beacon of innovation in the tech industry. Known for its cutting-edge products and ambitious vision, the company had grown rapidly under the leadership of its CEO, Richard Coleman. Richard was a visionary, a man with a reputation for making bold decisions that often paid off in spectacular ways. But as the company faced its greatest challenge yet, Richard's arrogance and lack of psychological safety within the organization would lead to its undoing. The challenge came in the form of a massive new project, the development of a groundbreaking AI platform that promised to revolutionize the industry. It was the most complex and high-stakes initiative Orion had ever undertaken, and the stakes were enormous. Richard, confident in his ability to steer the company through any storm, took complete control of the project. He dismissed the concerns of his leadership team, convinced that his vision was the only path to success. Richard believed that only he had the insight to make the right decisions and that the input of others would just slow things down. The atmosphere at Orion began to change. Team leaders who once contributed freely now found themselves nodding in agreement, afraid to challenge the CEO's ideas. They had seen what happened to those who dared to disagree, public reprimands, sidelining, and in some cases, demotions. The culture of innovation that had fueled Orion's success started to wither under the weight of Richard's ego. Within the AI project team, the lack of psychological safety was particularly acute. Engineers, scientists, and project managers worked under immense pressure, knowing that failure was not an option. Yet they also knew that raising concerns or suggesting alternative approaches would be career suicide. When issues arose, whether it was a flaw in the algorithm, a delay in the timeline, team members kept them to themselves, hoping they could be resolved before anybody else noticed. But the problems were too big to be ignored. The AI platform was built on shaky foundations, with key components rushed through development to meet Richard's aggressive deadlines. The launch went ahead as planned, but it was a disaster. The platform failed to meet expectations, with major clients experiencing critical failures within days of deployment. The tech press, once enamored with Orion's bold promises, now tore the company apart in scathing reviews. Stock prices plummeted, and investors demanded answers. The board of directors, seeing the company's downward spiral, finally intervened. Richard was forced to step down, and a new CEO was brought in to clean up the mess. In the end, Orion Technologies survived, but it was no longer the leader in the industry it had once been. The company's story became a stark reminder of the dangers of leadership arrogance and the critical importance of psychological safety in fostering true innovation. The collapse of the AI project was not just a failure of technology, it was a failure of leadership, a failure to listen, to trust, and to create an environment where people feel safe to speak the truth. It's a truly sad story. So, Jill.
Thank you, Miriam. Sad story, and it is a story. However, I'm sure it may have resonated with some of you, or some aspects of that story may have resonated with some of you, because we do know that obviously leadership impacts performance significantly. and can actually turn around a business either positively or negatively. In fact, in some recent research that we did, one of the questions we asked leaders, organizations, and employees was to rate the impact that leadership had on different aspects of organizational performance. But overall, 90% of employees actually said that leadership is either very or extremely important overall to organizational performance. They also particularly pointed out the impact of leadership on adapting to change, but also employee retention. So we know that leadership is really important. And we also know that leadership and what we need from leaders is changing. And we know this because we've also done some extensive global research where we asked, once again, organizations, employees, and leaders to talk to us and share with us how they thought, what they thought was now important in terms of leadership, and what leadership qualities were important to help them navigate the key challenges that they felt they were facing now and would be facing for the next 5 years. So this model that you see on the right-hand side of the screen is Talogy's in-view leadership framework, which we have created on the back and on the basis of the research that we carried out. This quote that you see in the left really sums up the overall shift in how leadership is changing. So becoming very much more people-centric, people-focused style and approach. What's driving these changes are global trends. So everything from societal changes through to economic changes, AI, the pace of change, and so on, things that you'll be very familiar with, are all driving the need for leadership to change. And so the role itself is changing, and that's why in the center of our framework we have identity. And this is leadership identity, by which we mean how a leader sees themselves, how they see their role, and how they see themselves in that role. And that is core to our leadership framework. It underpins how leaders behave. So, if we think back to the story that Miriam's just shared with us, if you see yourself as the leader that knows all the answers, has all the experience, you're going to lead in probably quite a command and control type of way. If you see your role as being more around releasing the talent of people around you, empowering others, not necessarily having all the answers, then you're going to lead in a more empowering, collaborative way. So identity is core. How you then manage that identity and perform your role is hugely impacted by how you use your emotional intelligence. And at Talogy, our definition of emotional intelligence is how you manage your personality in order to be personally and interpersonally effective. So once again, if I'm seeing my role as enabling, as empowering others, I have to manage myself to be able to provide that type of leadership to others. And that emotional intelligence then underpins each of the 6 core qualities that we believe lead to effective leadership. So you will see there the pizza slices, if you like, in our model. Inspiring purpose is pretty much what it says. So providing a consistent, a clear, a motivating, a compelling purpose for everybody in the organization. Empowering approach is really this element of, I don't know all the answers. In this world of greater complexity, leaders cannot be expected to know all the answers. And therefore, they need to be able to work with their teams, work with their peers and their colleagues so that everybody can contribute to problem solving. And this is adopting a much more empowering, enabling leadership approach. Authentic connection is all about how you present yourself, how you relate to others, how you include and make sure everybody in the organization is included authentically. Um, Agile mind is how you make sure that the organization and your team and your function is constantly adapting and looking for new ways of working to remain competitive. And then finally, steady presence is pretty much, again, what it says. So providing that steadiness for your team, for the organization, in an environment where things are constantly changing, are ambiguous, complex. So remaining as far as possible that consistent, reliable presence for teams and others. And focus on momentum is really about getting the job done. So managing performance, providing feedback, setting clear objectives. All of which is done in the context of managing those leadership tensions between driving for results and developing and enabling people, focusing on transformation, the future, whilst running business as usual. So that is how we believe leadership is changing. But what does that mean in terms of what we need to do to develop leaders for now and the future?
Thank you, Jill. So we know, as Jill said, that leadership is changing, and we know why it's changing. And all of our research points to what is really needed in the future world of work. So that means that the development of leadership also has to change. So Jill has mentioned identity work. So identity is the core of the model. Leaders lead from who they are. So working with your identity. And this is really about how you see yourself, who you are, your brand, the role that you believe you are there to perform, if you like. But this is different at different levels of leadership. And this is really, really important that people are guided through identity work as they effectively increase and achieve higher levels of stages of development or stages of psychological development. And this really requires them sometimes to leave part of their identity behind as they kind of start to embrace the new identity and what's needed in their new roles. Underpinned, and what really helps all of this is, as Jill mentioned, emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is really fundamentally about awareness and really understanding who you are and how you operate in the system and what is needed of you. So building on the identity, but also helping you to really understand what is needed, wanted, or missing, to be able to lean into and do what Richard Coleman was unable to do because he couldn't see the system within which he was operating. So that awareness is really important. And it's the awareness that allows us to then lean into the capabilities, the different distinct leadership qualities and capabilities. And Jill was talking about what each of those mean, but being able to deploy what is needed. So rather than what is preferable and easy for you to do as a leader, it's more about understanding what is required of you as a leader. Is it an inspiring purpose? Do you need to be more empowering, even though that might not naturally be your personality inclination, for example, but it might be the thing that's most needed. And then finally, it's really about balance. So the kind of development work is about how you balance all of these qualities. And sometimes that is not so easy. As I mentioned earlier, there's often an inclination, for example, with our personalities, maybe to be more focused on results rather than people, or to be more focused on transformation and the future rather than what's happening right now. So balancing these tensions and balancing it with awareness, with skill, with emotional intelligence, and really linking in that sense of identity and the process of who the leader is actually becoming. This is all of the stuff that undermines modern leadership development.
Thank you, Miriam. So Miriam's talked really around the kind of content, the things that we would be focusing on in leadership development. I guess the final question is, how do you do it? And is the age of leadership development programs dead now? So actually, in some more recent research that we've done, one of the questions we asked leaders was, what development activities have they found the most useful? And the top three that were ranked were coaching, mentoring, but still leadership development programs. And I guess no surprise in terms of coaching and mentoring, we know that those are very effective ways of developing leaders. slightly surprised to see leadership development programs still there. But then when we sat and thought about it, we realized that yes, that the, the leadership development programs now have a very different approach from perhaps the turn up to the 3 day sit and listen, tick box ticked, you're now developed as a leader. And what we mean by that is that those leadership development programs are positioned as part of a lifelong learning journey. This idea and this concept that I think many leaders recognize now, which is that leadership is an ongoing development activity. And also the need for those programs to be quite different in terms of the focus, the style, the approach. So much more focus on dynamic learning with things like group coaching. As we've talked about in terms of our framework, a lot more focus on awareness and development of mindset as well as skills, and involving coaching, one-to-one coaching, so blending one-to-one coaching with workshops to make the learning much more personalized, much more focused on the individual, as well as providing some group learning. And we're also finding that in our programs, this need to help leaders to navigate constant change, complexity, is being met by setting up leadership forums, setting them organizational challenges, and learning communities. So, ongoing, very work related learning to help them navigate complexity and ambiguity. So, whilst leadership development programs are still ranked as in the top 3 of most useful, I think what we're finding is that the actual style and approach, as well as the content, is massively changing. So, just to kind of end with a positive, because we started with a rather sad story. What happens when there is strong leadership? So when everything is right, when the leadership development is worked, when you have effective leadership, what happens in this scenario?
So we had some comments coming into chat here, Jill.
Okay.
So we have people are saying, so there is more trust, more clarity, people feel seen, things are delivered on time, people feel valued, more clarity, people are inspired, people are motivated. So it's very different to the Richard story that we started with.
Yes. 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 So I think all of those things and many more. And if we had more time, I'm sure we could spend a lot of time talking about what happens when there's strong leadership. But I guess to reference that story, one of the things that would have happened is he would have noticed very early on the lack of engagement. But more importantly, I think there would have been a climate where people could have said to him, this isn't working. We need to change the way that we're approaching this project. So it could have had a very different outcome. But that style of leadership, that openness, that engagement, that creation of psychological safety is probably quite a different style from the one that Richard Coleman grew up with. So thank you very much for listening to this recording. We hope you found it useful.